Would you ever let yourself become so wrapped up in hatred that you change your entire life to get revenge on someone? Well, that's exactly what I did, and it didn't exactly go to plan. I'm Clara, and I'm 25 years old. It all started 5 years ago when my boyfriend Jason went to study abroad in France. We were so in love at that time, and it wasn't easy being apart, but we coped surprisingly well. Jason even promised me we'd get married when he got back, but after a few short months of him being away, he started growing distant. He no longer called me every day, and he barely even replied to my texts. I thought maybe he was just too busy and stressful to deal with his new life, while struggling with missing me. So I decided to do something wild and fly to Paris to surprise him on his upcoming birthday. I hadn't really thought about it. I just excitedly got on the flight and taken a taxi to his apartment. But, well, the moment I saw him walking into the lobby, I instantly regretted it. There Jason was, but he wasn't alone. He was hugging and kissing some other girl, and she even went upstairs with him. I felt my blood boil, and I wanted to scream, but instead, I just left. I was so upset, but I was also angry. How could he betray me like that? Going a long way just to see my boyfriend betraying me right in front of my eyes was a bad thing, and I didn't think life could get any worse. But I was wrong. Things were about to get much worse. After leaving his place, I booked myself into a nearby hostel and cried myself to sleep. The next moment, I was waking up to a burning smell. Oh God, the hostel was on fire! I was lucky to make it out of there alive, but I was badly burned and left with a huge scar on my face. There I was, heartbroken and burnt to a crisp in a foreign country where I knew no one and didn't speak the language. I'd never been so lonely and ugly in my life. As I looked in the mirror, all I felt was anger and resentment towards Jason. He destroyed my life, and at all costs, I would make him pay for it. After I'd recovered, I got on the plane and flew back to the USA. That's when I started plotting my revenge. I had a few things up my sleeve, but first things first. Plastic surgery. So, as soon as I graduated, I got myself a full face rework. I even changed my name, moved to a new apartment, and lived with a new identity. My life was miserable enough, so now all I wanted was to start all over again. And it worked. After the surgery, I turned into a completely different person, just like I'd wanted. And what's more, I was even more beautiful than before the accident. I felt incredible and couldn't wait to start living again. Of course, I had to work my ass off to pay off my plastic surgery, but it was worth it, wasn't it? More than that, that was also how I tried my best to build a career for myself. Jason would regret cheating on me for the rest of his life, that's for sure. And as planned, after 3 years of working hard, I eventually got promoted to a management position in the construction company I worked for, and became a beautiful, successful woman that many people admired. At the same time, a few of my friends mentioned that Jason had finally returned from Paris and was now working for a big architectural firm. I almost laughed when I heard the company's name. That was our new partner company. Oh, things were about to get fun. My friends also told me that he'd brought his French girlfriend back to the USA with him and that they were getting married soon. What? He was about to get married? They seemed so happy together, huh? No wonder that for all these years, he hadn't tried to contact me once. After I caught him cheating, I just disappeared. I could have been dead for all he knew. But he didn't seem to care. This made me hate him even more. There was no way a traitor could live happily like that. I couldn't wait any longer. It was time to put my plan into action. So I told my boss I'd work on the project with Jason's firm. At least this way, I'd have an excuse to approach him. At that first meeting, I made sure I looked as beautiful as possible and waited with bated breath. Of course, Jason didn't recognize me. And well, would you believe it? He kept looking at me and flirting with me. I found it hilarious, and so kept flirting back, and eventually he got the hint and asked me out. What a jerk! Now I understood why I was abandoned in the past. Even when he already had his fiancée, he could still flirt leisurely with others. His poor fiancée! I kept playing along, and even made plans to befriend his fiancée, Valerie. I knew she hung out in a certain cafe, so one day I went there and accidentally bumped into her, dropping water all over her gorgeous outfit. I kept apologizing and told her I'd pay to get it dry cleaned, and eventually we started chatting and hit it off. We exchanged numbers, and I asked if she'd like to go shopping sometime, which she agreed to. This was way too easy. A few days later, we went shopping, and it didn't take long before she started confiding in me about how lonely she was, and that other than her boyfriend, she didn't know anyone here. I smiled sweetly and told her I'd happily be her best friend. At the same time, Jason and I were dating. I pretended to fall for him, even though inside I was furious at him. I even told him I'd share some confidential work documents with him if he pampered me and treated me like a princess. He seemed totally in love with me and spent all his spare time taking me out to dinner and buying me expensive gifts. It seemed like he was no longer interested in Valerie. Obviously, Valerie came to me and told me that she was very sad because the wedding was coming soon, but her fiancé was just cold and acting weird. On the one hand, I comforted and encouraged her, but on the other hand, I seduced Jason and took most of his money. He'd even put my name on the house contract, so technically, I owned his place. You know, I wanted Jason to feel the pain of being betrayed by the person he trusted. Then one day, Valerie called me in tears and said she suspected her boyfriend was seeing someone else. I asked her what her boyfriend's name was and where he worked, and said she didn't need to worry. I'd help her find out. A few days later, I sent Valerie a few photos of him cheating with me, but obviously, I hid my face. However, it was just enough evidence to make her suffer. Then I told Valerie that it looked like her boyfriend was working with this other girl on a project, and that Valerie could get her revenge by destroying the project. That way, he wouldn't be able to work with this other girl anymore. Valerie totally fell for it. It was insane. The very next day, I heard from my colleagues that Jason's crazy fiancée had destroyed the final layout for the design of the two companies' project. She spilled water on his laptop and threw it onto the ground. While the deadline was coming, it was too late to start it over. Apparently, Jason's boss was fuming and fired him immediately. This contract was worth millions of dollars, and he'd just ruined everything. I had to give it to Valerie. She didn't even think about it. That's how dumb she was. Served Jason right. Finally, karma had come and bitten him in the ass. That evening, I went over to their house. Jason now has no job, no money, and he was about to lose his fiancée and his house, too. I knocked on the door, and when Valerie opened it, she was shocked to see me, but not as shocked as she was about to become. Jason saw me and looked like he was going to pass out. "Surprise!" I said. "Hi, Jason." At this, Valerie looked confused and said, "Wait, do you two know each other?" I just laughed and said, "We sure do, Valerie. In fact, I'm the other woman who he is cheating on you with. And that's not all. I'm actually Jason's ex." Then I turned to Jason. "That's right, Jason. It's me, Clara. Valerie, when he came to Paris, he was dating me, and then he cheated on me with you, so I've been getting my sweet revenge." Both of them looked completely stunned, and instead of shouting at me, they started fighting with each other. Valerie was screaming. "How could you?" Jason shouted back. "You're crazy! If you hadn't ruined my laptop, things wouldn't have been like this." "Oh, really? If you hadn't cheated on me, I wouldn't have done that," Valerie said, while bursting out crying. Pretty soon, she found out that the house belonged to me now, and all of his money, and that's when all hell broke loose. I just stood there, admiring how great my revenge had played out. Eventually, they broke up with each other, and I decided to kick them out of the house. So my cherished revenge plan for the past few years has been successful. However, there was just one problem. The price I paid for it wasn't small. When I showed up at work the next day, everyone was whispering about me, saying the project I'd been working on had been a complete failure, and that it was all because I seduced the guy from our partner firm, even when he was about to marry his fiancée. It was a disaster. My reputation was ruined. I couldn't handle everyone being against me, so I resigned. I decided to spend some time at home for a while, trying to clear my head. I didn't get it. I'd spent years plotting my revenge, and now that it had finally been a success, why did I feel so bad? I'd been so caught up in ruining Jason's life. I hadn't thought how it would affect my life, too. I'd been delusional. Above all, the joy and satiety of watching the two of them move out of the house was just temporary, and what remained after that was just a feeling of emptiness. What had I been doing? I was just ruining people's lives, especially with Valerie. She was so innocent in all of this. How could I have been so cruel? Then one day, as I was walking down the street, I saw her at the bus stop, and she looked so sad and thin, and it tormented me. That poor girl didn't deserve this. I couldn't just stand there and do nothing. I had to apologize, so I raced across the street. But by the time I got there, the bus had come, and she had gone. I decided to call her instead. I asked if we could talk, and at first, she refused. But once I said sorry and told her how terrible I felt about everything, she agreed to meet me. I was holding the keys to her old house, and as she walked towards me, I handed them over. She was surprised, but then I started to explain. Valerie, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to hurt you. It's just that Jason broke my heart, and for years, all I thought about was destroying his life the way he destroyed mine. I didn't realize you were so sweet, and now I see how awful I was to you. You don't deserve any of this. You trusted me, and I completely betrayed you. At first, Valerie didn't say anything. Then she started shouting at me, saying she'd thought of me as her best friend, and that she felt so pathetic for trusting me. At this point, I burst into tears. I was a monster. The minute I started crying, something changed in Valerie. She hugged me. I couldn't believe it. After everything I'd done to her, she still wanted to hug me. We were there hugging and crying, and yep, finally something good had come out of all this mess. I had a friend, and very quickly, this friend will become my best friend for sure. You guys, honestly, I don't recommend wasting your time on revenge. I threw away so many years of my life obsessing over hurting Jason, and in the end, it just hurt me and poor innocent Valerie. From my own experience, I just want to tell you that always be the bigger person and live for yourself, not for others.
Oh, my sweet little Jake. I'm glad you're back. I missed you so much. These were the first few words I heard from my mom after a seriously long sleep. But why couldn't I move my body? Oh my God, was I paralyzed? A doctor appeared and told me everything. Oh, Jesus. I'd been in a coma for 5 months. Yeah, you heard me right. Not 5 days, not 5 weeks, but 5 freaking months. The good news was that I wasn't paralyzed. I just needed some therapy to strengthen my muscles. So you're probably wondering how I ended up in a coma. Me too, so I asked my mom. Sweetie, you had your headphones on and you were singing along to some tune. You were so loud I could hear you outside while I was gardening. So I waved at you to quiet down, but you tripped over your sneakers, fell out the window, and knocked your head on the flower pot. What? That was so dumb. Why couldn't it have been something cool like I took on a mugger or tackled a shark or something, huh? Anyway, therapy became the norm for me. But where were my dad, my girlfriend Jenny, and my best friend Ben? None of them visited me, not even once. And they were all ignoring my calls and messages. I asked Mom about it, and she told me Dad was on a business trip. Ben had moved towns, and I'd already broken up with Jenny before the coma. Huh? We'd broken up? That couldn't be. I didn't remember us breaking up. In fact, the last thing I do remember was sending her a cheesy meme of a cat and telling her she was perfect. Boy, this sucked. Finally, I was discharged from the hospital. My first stop was Jenny's house. I pounded on the door, and eventually she stuck her head out and said, Jake? You're awake? Yeah, exactly, I'm awake. I asked her why'd we'd split up, and she shook her head and told me we hadn't. The only reason she hadn't answered my calls was that she thought it was a joke. Then she told me to go home, as she was busy at the moment, and then she closed the door on me. Weird. But at least we hadn't broken up. Maybe she was nervous. Oh, and she wanted to do her hair and makeup to look pretty in my eyes. Well, that must be it. It made total sense now. Girls are weird sometimes. So I had school tomorrow, but I knew I needed to catch up on the happenings of the world first. So I went online and did some research. What? Pass me the tissues as I was about to cry. My favorite TV show, Supernatural, was over. For real this time. Oh my God. After 15 years, how could they? Oh wow, there was more. Trump wasn't the president anymore. And what's with all this dancing on TikTok? It all gave me a headache, so I went to bed. The next morning at school, I walked into class, and everyone rushed over to me and hugged me and high-fived me. Well, except for Ben. Geez, talk about a lousy friend. But hang on, wasn't he meant to move towns? So having my charm, good looks, sporting talents, and the hottest girlfriend in the school made me a super popular guy. No wonder everyone seemed so delighted to see me. It was good to be back. But then my teacher arrived, glared at me, and told me I was in the wrong class. I'd been pushed back to junior year because I'd missed too much school. What? I couldn't graduate with my classmates? Bummer. I sat down with these juniors and oh God. It looked like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was sitting in a kindergarten class. They all looked like little kids in comparison to me. I've never been so relieved for lunch break in all my life. I hurried to the canteen and saw Jenny, so I hugged her from behind. Huh? Why did she have a balloon under her shirt? I stared at her belly in shock. Yup, my girl was pregnant. She burst into tears and started apologizing. The room started to spin, and before I knew it, I'd fainted. I woke up in the hospital. Again. I was seriously getting sick of this place. The doctor said I should take it easy and avoid stress at any cost. Oh well, I just found out my girlfriend was pregnant after I woke up from a freaking coma. Tell me, how am I supposed to not be stressed now? After that, Mom took me home. Dad was there. It was so good to see him. I hugged him, but he gave me this awkward look and told me he was only there to pick up some things. Huh? Where was he going now? And that's when my parents told me the shocking news. They were divorced. What? I mean, I knew they argued sometimes, but this was absurd. Something must have happened while I was in a coma. And what's with my dad's attitude? He barely looked at me. This was weird. It felt like I'd woken up from my coma in a parallel universe or something. Little did I know that it was about to get a lot crazier. The next day at school, I saw Ben's car pull up in front of the entrance. Then he opened the passenger door and helped Jenny get out. Oh, hell no! Now everything was clear. I ran toward them and did a Mortal Kombat punch right in Ben's nose. Damn, it felt good. But it did land us both in detention. I had to sit in a room with that jerk for an entire hour. I couldn't hold it in anymore and needed to confront him. He just shrugged and replied, "We thought you were never going to wake up again. Jenny was devastated, so I took care of her for you." Was he serious? He took care of her by getting her pregnant? Great job, buddy. There was no way I was ever talking to him again, and I was kicking him out of the basketball team. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that I'm the captain. The next day I strolled into practice and shouted, "Yo, your captain's back, and he will lead this team to victory." I expected cheers, but nope, they all stayed quiet and stared down at their feet. Then the coach came over and told me I was off the team for a whole 6 months, doctor's orders. And guess who the new captain was? Yeah. No other than my amigo, Ben. Let me get this straight. I was in a coma, so my best pal Ben over here stole not only my girl, but also my position as captain? Wow. Someone put me back in my coma, please, thanks, because this life sucks. No wonder my mom told me he'd moved away. I wish he had. I was so mad and I needed to talk to somebody, so I went to my dad's house. I was about to knock on the door when I heard voices between my dad and a woman coming from inside the house. I sneaked over to the window and started to film them on my phone. But wait a minute, this wasn't some random chick. It was Jenny. "We can't hide this from Jake forever." "Nonsense, he'll never find out unless you tell him, so keep up the act. Here's the money for this month, now go." Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. Okay, let me put all the pieces together. My dad had an affair with Jenny and the baby was his. So my mom found out and divorced him. Then she lied to protect me. But Dad didn't want the baby, so Jenny tricked Ben into believing it was his. Now everything makes sense. Luckily, I had the footage of his traitorous antics. So it was time to threaten him with it. After all, being a local politician, the last thing he would want was for this to get out. I set up a fake email and attached the video with the message, "I know your dirty secret and I'm going to make you pay." He immediately replied that he would pay me $10,000 for the footage. I told him to meet me in the park at midnight to discuss it. I also sent the video to Jenny and told her that unless she wanted this to go viral, she had to go to the park. I got there early and spent a couple hours hiding in a bush while I waited for them. They looked surprised when they saw each other, but nothing prepared them for me hobbling out of the bush. Ouch, leg cramp, and saying, "Well, what do we have here? My dearest father and my loving girlfriend having a baby together." I took my phone out and continued. "How could you do this to me and Mom? I thought it's only right the world get to see this and learn what you're really like." My dad begged me to stop, but I was so mad. So mad that I was about to upload it from my phone when Jenny suddenly shouted, "Will you just tell him the truth already?" Oh God, there was more? My dad sighed and began to tell me everything. Brace yourselves, it's more dramatic than a soap opera. My parents didn't divorce because of Jenny. They had issues for a while but only stayed together for me. So without me around, they split for good. But Dad wasn't having an affair. The baby wasn't his, and it wasn't Ben's either. Nope, it was mine. But Dad knew his son becoming a dad at such a young age would look bad for his career. So he was paying Jenny to fool Ben into thinking it was his baby. Oh my God, these people were mad. This was too much to deal with, so I ran out of there. I locked myself away in my room and tried to figure it all out. The coma had been bad. But the worst part of it all was that the people I cared about most in the world betrayed and lied to me. The next day, Jenny came to my house and asked if we could get back together. Of course I agreed. Ha! Just kidding. My actual answer was, hell no, not in a million years. I mean, come on, let's do the math, shall we? First, she left me for money, and second, she had an affair with my best friend. We were over for good, but I will continue to support her and always be there for our kid. Ben tried talking to me a few times, but I don't want to hear anything he has to say. There's no way I'm ever being friends with that lying jerk ever again. I'm still annoyed that Mom lied to me, but I guess I don't blame her. She did it with the best intentions. And she just wanted to protect me. Besides, when the going got tough, she was the only one who stayed by my side. As for Dad, it's going to take a long time for me to fully forgive him, but I'm trying. I mean, he did some pretty awful things, but at the end of the day, he's still my dad. So that's pretty much it. Crazy, right? A coma took everything from me, but also revealed the true faces of the people around me. Now I've decided to follow 2 rules in my life. 1, be extra careful of who I put my trust in. And 2, never sing near an open window ever again.
I am who I am, but you're just too selfish to accept it. And also, you love the person you created in your fantasy, not me. So, I think we should end it here. It's for the best.
So, that's me there. Yep, the blubbering girl. And the boy, that's Edward, the love of my life. I knew this would happen, as it said as much in both mine and Edward's horoscopes. It'd been written in the stars. How unfair was that? It all began on a normal, sunny day. I started it as I always did, by reading my horoscope. My eyes widened when I saw what it said. Today your paths will cross with your soulmate. Oh, my days, this was it. I was finally going to meet my Prince Charming. I was so excited that I had to skip to my step as I made my way to school. Oh, by the way, I'm a Taurus sun and Pisces moon. I understand that not everyone's as clued up on these things as I am, but basically, this means I'm a shy girl who's timid around strangers, but I have great empathy towards others. However, my main trait is that I daydream to escape from reality. The one problem with being a daydreamer is that other people were constantly telling me I should be louder, brasher, sassier. Ugh, no thanks. That isn't who I am. Seriously. They should borrow all you need to know about your star sign book and look it up, or go and find a Leo. I trust my horoscopes so much that I live my life by them. In fact, horoscopes have saved me on more than one occasion. For instance, there was this one day I refused to go to class at all costs because my daily horoscope said, "You may get caught up in an accident at work or school, so proceed with caution." And you wouldn't believe what happened in science class. One of my classmates spilled acid all over the place. Luckily, no one was hurt, but still, thank God I wasn't there. Horoscopes are super important to me, but so is my love of Korean dramas, especially the romantic ones. Swoon. I always imagine all kinds of cute situations in which I find the love of my life who is as handsome, as funny, and caring as the male leads in the drama series. And that's why no guy I've seen ever met my expectations. But my horoscope said it's going to happen, so I was adamant that it would. I wondered what he'd look like and what star sign he'd be. Surely he had to be a Cancer, right? We would accidentally bump into each other, fall in love, overcome all difficulties together, and live happily ever after. This was so exciting. I was daydreaming by my locker when I overheard some girls whispering about a new boy named Edward. Curious, I squeezed myself through the crowd and oh my God. This guy had a face like a Greek Adonis. Could he be my prince? There was only one way to know for sure. I needed to find out his star sign. But like I said, I'm a shy girl. So I was hardly going to go up to him and ask him for his date of birth, as he'd think I was a weirdo. I continued to daydream about my dilemma, and then bingo! I came up with an amazing, foolproof idea. See, being a Pisces has its serious perks. As he was new, his file would be at reception for Mrs. Shillington to sort out. I waited until the start of lunch break as I knew it would be quieter around there then. Then I sneaked over to her desk and scanned through Edward's file. What? He's an Aries, the total opposite of me. How could he be the one? As I walked away, I couldn't stop thinking. His rising moon sign must be Pisces or Cancer, or maybe something that matched mine. It was impossible to know for sure without knowing the exact time he was born. They should really make adding it to documents a legal requirement, as it's important. I was so lost in my thoughts that I bumped straight into someone. I looked up and mumbled out a sorry. Oh my days, it was Edward. This was it. Our paths had crossed. Soon he'd invite me for a walk across the beach. Then we'd kiss under the moonlight.
Hey, are you okay?
He stared at me, but I was too busy fantasizing to focus. I think I may have been drooling a bit. So he put his hands on my shoulders and started shaking me.
Hey, you're okay, right?
I finally snapped out of it, blushed, and muttered out, "Yep, I'm fine. I know I'm a pretty girl. Hey, us Pisces have a natural-born charisma. Plus, I was having this blushing look on. How can any boy resist this cutie?" So I wasn't all that surprised when Edward said,
"Good. You had me worried there for a minute. I'm new here and don't really know anyone."
He itched at his neck.
"So, do you want to go grab a coffee after school? Besides, it'll be my way of apologizing for not looking where I was going."
I gave my sweetest smile and said, "Sure." We arranged to meet at this nearby coffee house. I know I told you I'm a quiet person, but surprisingly, Edward and I just clicked. We shared a muffin and he told me meeting me had been the best part of his day. He even asked for my number before I went home. Yay! Oh, I also found out what time he was born. I rushed home so I could look up his star sign, and as I expected, his moon and rising sun is Cancer, a total match with me. From that day on, we started texting and calling loads and even saw each other every day. It was great, until one day. He asked me if I wanted to be his girlfriend. Oh my God, of course I wanted to. Everything was going exactly as I imagined it. But that's when it also started to get messy. Okay, so my horoscope obsession means I talk about stars, planets, the moon, the sun, and the personalities of each zodiac a lot. I know this drives him bonkers, as he's such a skeptic. One day in his horoscope, it was written that he should take it easy today and avoid strenuous exercise. But Edward had an important basketball match at school. I begged him not to participate, but he wouldn't listen. He said it was absurd. The team needed him and he couldn't let them down on a whim. I was frantic with worry that he was going to break his leg or something. I couldn't let this happen, so I put some laxative syrup in his water bottle. A few spoonsful would be enough, right? But I think I may have poured a little too much as he disappeared into the restroom for hours. Oops. The team lost. But at least my boyfriend didn't have any broken bones, right? That's not all. It was vital to me that he made all sorts of romantic gestures, just like they did in the Korean dramas that I love. So I made him stand outside my house in the middle of the night, then call me to tell me to go by the window so he could see me because he missed me so much that he needed to see my face. This was so romantic, especially when it rained. Nothing's hotter than your boyfriend standing under the rain in front of your house. Although I thought it was totally normal, Edward didn't think so. He thought I was insane, and he ended up with a cold afterward. Then one morning, I checked our horoscopes and I stared at my phone screen in shock. We were gonna break up, and that's when I got a message from him.
We need to talk. Meet you after school.
Oh Jesus, this wasn't a good sign. Did he really want to end things between us? All day long, I played out different scenarios of us breaking up in my head. Talk about torture. By the time school ended, I just wanted to get this over with, then go home and cry into my pillow. Edward was super quiet. He couldn't even meet my eyes, and the look on his face was so serious. I thought to myself, oh no, this is really happening? Our breakup was inevitable, but that didn't mean he got to do it. Yeah, that's right. So as soon as he began to talk, I butted in and said, I'm sorry, Edward, but we need to break up. Edward looked confused. At first, he thought I was playing out one of the romantic scenes again. But then when he realized I wasn't, he asked why, and I replied, because our horoscope said so. Angrily, he replied,
Alice, I was going to introduce you to my parents tonight because I love you.
What? He wanted me to meet his parents and take our relationship to the next level? Stammering, I quickly tried to correct myself, but he didn't listen.
You trust some garbage from the internet more than your own boyfriend. I am who I am, but you're just too selfish to accept it. And also, you love the person you created in your fantasy, not me. So, I think we should end it here. It's for the best.
Then he left me standing there alone in floods of tears. I couldn't stop thinking about Edward and how devastated he looked. Did I misread the horoscopes? Or maybe they were wrong? I love him and he loved me too. We were meant to be, right? Suddenly, I knew exactly what I needed to do. So the next evening, I went around to Edward's house. He answered the door and gave me a confused look.
Alice, what are you doing here?
I messed up and I'm so sorry. Please forgive me.
He snorted. Is that so? What about if your horoscope tells you different tomorrow? Then what?
It doesn't matter. I shook my head. I'm willing to make some changes. Why do you think I'm here? I'm ready to take the next step in our relationship and meet your family. I held a box of chocolates up. Does your mom like chocolates? At first, he was silent, but then he smiled and pulled me in for a hug.
Yes, Alice. My mom loves chocolates, but I love you more.
Phew. So, I got my boyfriend back and also met his family, who turns out are super nice. I try not to mention horoscopes too much, but I may have asked his sweet mom if she's a Libran. Yup, she is. I knew it. As for now, I'm still reading my horoscopes, but I'm not taking them quite as literal anymore. I've learned that the stars tell the possibility, not the truth. At the end of the day, everything that happens to me is based on my own decisions and actions, nothing else. Hey, horoscopes led me to find Edward, but they also almost caused me to lose him forever. And there's no way I'm making that mistake ever again.
I used to think that being beautiful meant I'd sail through life and always get whatever I wanted. Yeah, I know this sounds dumb, but back in high school, life was so much easier down to my good looks. All it took was a flutter of my eyelashes, and the nerds would do my homework for me. And girls invited me to their parties because they knew me going meant the cute boys would go too. It was nice having attention from other boys, but I was only interested in my boyfriend, Logan. He was a senior, and he was just perfect. He was so handsome, super smart, and a sports pro. There was one teeny tiny problem. I sucked at studying. It was just so boring. But to be honest, it didn't matter anyways, as I was beautiful. And being beautiful was enough. Besides, I did have one passion. I love singing and composing music. I don't publicize them or anything, but I'm not gonna lie, they were quite catchy. We had one long summer together before Logan went off to college. So I decided to surprise him with a love song I'd written for him. I showed up at his house with my guitar, ready to play it to him, but before I could start it, he said, "Ailey, I want to break up." What? Why? I spluttered out. "I've met someone else. She isn't as beautiful as you, but she's smarter. We're going to study at Stanford together. Let's face it, a place like that's way out of your reach." I couldn't believe what I just heard. I grabbed his arm and begged him to give our love another chance, but he just walked away. During the next few days, I kept calling and texting him, but he ghosted me completely. Feeling desperate, I searched for his girlfriend's info on social media and found out her name was Jolie, and she was one of the top students of another high school in the city. And OMG, how could he fall in love with such an ugly girl? Oh, turns out Logan wanted a smart girl, huh? So if I got into this college, then he would take me back, right? I mean, surely he'd pick a smart and beautiful girl over a smart, ugly one. That settled it. I was going to work my butt off for my senior year to get into Stanford. Geez, studying was way harder than I anticipated. It didn't help that I had loads of catching up to do. And why did Logan have to study economics? All the numbers and graphs made me feel super dizzy. I didn't know where to start. Everything was new to me, so I had to ask a couple of my nerdy admirers to help me out. At first, they actually laughed at me as they thought I was kidding. But when they realized I was being deadly serious, they handed me some books and tried explaining stuff to me. I even spent my break times in the library. Ugh, why was it like a maze in there? I swear I got lost and couldn't find my way out for at least an hour. One time, I even fell asleep in the library, and some dude thought it was funny to take a picture. And for days after that, everyone at school passed around the photo of me drooling on a pile of books. Ew! But despite those hardships, I couldn't give up. I even stuck a photo of Logan to my wall to remind me of my goal. I stopped hanging out with my friends and didn't go to any more parties. And I even missed prom to study. Needless to say, my friends really thought that I was insane or something. Even my mom was so worried that she wanted to take me to the hospital to be checked over. OMG! How ridiculous! Stop overreacting, people! Have you never seen a hardworking, beautiful girl before? And then, something crazy happened. I received my letter from Stanford, and OMG, guess what? I got in! I couldn't believe it, and neither did my family and friends. Everyone was so surprised and happy for me. To be honest, giving up on music was a pity, but studying music wouldn't help me get Logan back, and this would. I was going to be at the same college as him, studying the same course, albeit a year behind. What could possibly go wrong? So, I moved to college and ended up with the geekiest roommate ever. She actually plastered math equations onto the walls. Ugh, what a weird girl. Moreover, studying here was even more boring than in high school. Much more. One time during a macroeconomics class, yep, it's as boring as it sounds, I had my earbuds in and was thinking up song lyrics when someone knocked on my desk. How dare they interrupt my creative flow? So I blurted out, "1 second, I'm writing," while my eyes were still on my notebook. Then I looked up to see Professor Bentley standing there. He snatched my notebook, saw my lyrics, then told me, "Get out at once and never come back." Whatever, I was sick of this snooze-inducing subject anyway. Seriously, watching paint dry would have been more fun. I stormed out of there, ranting to myself about how I hated his lame class, when I turned a corner and saw Logan holding hands with his ugly girlfriend. Ugh! Why now? Logan stared at me like he'd seen a ghost, then asked, "Haley, what are you doing here?" I forced a smile at him, but before I could say anything, his girlfriend spoke out. "Oh, you're Ailey, my boyfriend's infamous stalker? Let me guess, Professor Bentley kicked you out? Figures, as he's allergic to brainless girls." Then she dragged Logan away. How dare she mock me? I was far too beautiful to be spoken to like that by the likes of her. I was going to show her. I'd soon win back my man. I went back to my room and listed some ideas. I could buy him a gift. Nah, too obvious. Or I could tag him in pictures of us together. Nah, too desperate. I know. I should stick to what I'm good at. In my case, that's music. Besides, how romantic would me singing a love song to him be? He wouldn't be able to resist. Some days later, I took my guitar out into the yard. Crowd began to gather around me, so I said, "I wrote this song for my ex, Logan. Just wanted to say that I love you so much. Will you be my boyfriend again?" Everyone around me cheered, and it made me even more excited, and I started singing. After I finished my song, Logan and Jolie appeared. He looked awkward, and she looked so mad, I thought steam might come out of her ears. Whatever. I didn't care about her. I shimmied over to them, then touched his shoulder. "Honey, I worked so hard to get into the same college as you. Now, will you come back to me?" Then, to my surprise, he angrily said, "Illy, please stop. We're over. You're crazy. All of this is crazy. Now, please, leave me alone." I stood there gobsmacked as he took Jolie's hand and they walked off. I could hear the crowd whispering about me. I felt like my world was falling down. I was moping on my bed, daydreaming about happier days with Logan, when my roommate threw her phone onto my bed and said, "You might want to see this." I looked at it. What? It was me. Someone had filmed my failed serenade attempt, and now I'd gone viral. But the majority of the comments were super supportive, saying I had an awesome voice. After that, everyone in college knew my name. Okay, so all the attention felt good. Due to popular demand, I ended up releasing my song. Even the student council of the college invited me to join a performance at the school celebration. My college life just got better, as I was doing what I loved, and I made new friends. But I felt far from ecstatic, as I hated my course, and I still hadn't won Logan back. One evening, while I was stretching on the couch and thinking about Logan, a text arrived. It was from a strange number. They told me to hurry over to the dorm yard, as there was something wrong with Logan. There was a huge crowd gathered there. Oh no, this must be serious. Frantically, I pushed through them, and that's when I saw Logan standing there with his back to me, in the middle of a candle heart shape. He must have sent me the message. I shakily walked toward him, and then softly called his name. He turned around, got on one knee, but his face was still fixed on the ground. Then, to my surprise, he said, "I really love you and want to be a part of your life. Will you marry me, Jolie?" Oh. Wait, what? Jolie? I shouted. He looked up at me and loudly said, "Ailey, what are you doing here?" Huh? What was going on? I looked back, and that's when I saw that some of their friends were standing behind me with some affectionate photos of Jolie and Logan, and also banners saying, "Will you marry me, Jolie?" Okay, so this clearly wasn't for me. Suddenly, Jolie appeared, and in a mocking voice said, "First you stalk my boyfriend, and now you ruin our proposal? Get real! He doesn't want you." Before I could say anything, Logan yelled at me. "Oh, Ailey, please stop it. I'm begging you. Stop being so obsessed. It makes me sick. I don't love you anymore, and I'm never going to want you back." I stood there totally mortified. I heard the crowd jeering at me and taking photos. I quickly ran away with tears streaming down my face. I angrily dialed back the phone number that had sent me the message, but it was blocked. This must have been someone's idea of a sick joke. A week later, my phone buzzed. What? It was from Logan. I quickly opened the message.
Hi, Ellie. Look, I found out that Jolie sent you the message to meet at the yard. My friend let slip to her about the proposal, so she came up with that prank to embarrass you. Your behavior made her feel very insecure, and although it was wrong what she did, you brought it on yourself. Please move on and find happiness, as this isn't you. Your actions have made you ugly, and you've lost yourself.
I burst into tears because I knew he was right. I gave up on my passion and applied for a course I had no interest in, and all for this guy that still didn't choose me. Now it was time to give up on Logan and this college. After all, neither were right for me. I might be beautiful, but looks alone don't buy someone's love. There's so much more to it than that. For now, I've moved back home, but I'm going to put my heart and soul into my music, then apply to a music school majoring in composition, because I finally realized that it isn't Logan who will make me happy. It's my passion.
I opened the drawer and, there it was. I'd been looking for this magazine for ages. But as I closed the drawer, I noticed something else. A photo hiding under the magazine. There was a woman and 2 kids in the photo. A boy and a girl. I was so confused. Who were they? I turned it over and there was a message on the back that said, "This is my new number. Call me more often. I miss you so much." Suddenly my mom came in and I was about to ask her about the photo, but she got mad and started screaming at me to get out of the room. "Never, ever come into our room again. Do you hear me, Erin? We have private stuff in here. You know the rules." I was just looking for the magazine, I said, and quickly tucked the photo inside before running out of her room. Actually, I knew I wasn't meant to go in my parents' room, but I was doing a school essay on sustainability, and I'd seen an article in my mom's magazine about it a few days back. So I'd searched the whole house to try and find it. Eventually, I knew the only place it could be was their room, so I snuck in. Usually their door was locked, so I was in luck. Ever since I was a kid, I had been forbidden to go in there, but I had no idea why. Back in my room, I couldn't stop staring at the photo. Were these my relatives or something? Long-lost cousins? The boy in the pic looked totally like my dad. Oh no. Reading the note behind it again, suddenly I thought this could be another family of my dad. Do you know what I meant? Yes. What if my dad had a secret family? Maybe he'd cheated on my mom and had this whole other secret life. My inner detective was going crazy. There was nothing else for it. I had to get to the bottom of this and find out the truth. I searched online for the phone number and couldn't believe it when a girl the same age as me popped up. I started scrolling through all her photos and suddenly saw one of a young guy holding a baby, and the caption said, "Miss the old days of being daddy's little girl." This was insane! I was certain the young guy in the photo was my dad, and I needed to talk to the girl ASAP. I messaged her and told her we were related. I even sent some photos of me taken with my dad to prove it. I was shaking when I saw her reply pop up. "My dad never mentioned you. Not even once." That hurt me so much. I couldn't believe this girl was actually my dad's daughter too. Now, how am I supposed to break this news to Mom? She'd freak out. I couldn't bear the thought of seeing this crush her. So I decided to go clear things up myself first. A few days later, my dad was going on a business trip to Boston. Again. He was always going to Boston. I'd always believed he was just super busy at work, but now I knew the truth as my dad's secret daughter had confirmed she was also from Boston. I mean, of course she was. So I told my mom I was going to spend the weekend at my friend's house. And the moment my dad left, I jumped in a cab that I'd called and asked the driver to follow him. When we got to Boston, I saw my dad stop outside of a house and then glance around as if he thought he was about to get caught. Then he got out of his car and rang the doorbell. A woman came to open and immediately they started kissing. Then a young girl appeared and, yep, It was exactly the people in the photo. I was shaking so much, I actually dropped the money for the cab. It felt like my dad had punched me in the chest. I was so upset. He had this whole other family that Mom and I had no clue about. I couldn't stand it anymore. Mom didn't deserve this. I walked towards the house and was so focused on what I was planning to say to my dad, I didn't even notice a van pulling up right next to me. Suddenly, everything went black, and I realized I had been blindfolded. A huge hand was covering my mouth so I couldn't even scream. I felt tape being put across my lips, sealing them shut. Then someone yanked me backwards and shoved me into some kind of car. Oh my God, was I being kidnapped? Why? Had my dad seen me and now he was trying to cover his tracks? This was like something out of a movie. They even tied me up. After what felt like 1,000,000,000 hours, we finally stopped and I was dragged out of the car into a cold, dark building. Someone took my blindfold off, but it was so dark inside I couldn't really see anything except a single light bulb above my head. The tape across my mouth was pulled off and I was untied. I wanted to run out of there as fast as possible, but I was terrified. 2 men dressed in black were standing in the room and one of them glared at me and said, "They think they can hide you forever?" "Who are you?" I shouted. "Where am I? If it's money you want, call my dad. Please, just let me go," I said, in what must have been the shakiest voice ever. "Don't worry, we're not going to hurt you. We don't even need money. It's your parents we want. In 3 weeks, they'll be out of prison, and then they'll need to come here to get you back. Then we can really punish you for knowing too many secrets about us." I had no idea what they were talking about. Prison? My parents aren't in prison. You've got the wrong person. One of the men just laughed and said, "It's been 12 years, and yet you still don't know about it." Then he walked off laughing his head off. What? What were they talking about? None of this made any sense. My dad was a businessman, and my mom was a housewife. This was all some big mix-up. It had to be. They'd locked me in that dark room. I tried to scream and bang on the door, but no one heard me. Or if they did, they didn't care. The next few days were some of the worst of my life. I didn't think I'd survive. Twice a day, someone slipped food under the door, and I spent most of the time trying to think of ways to escape. There was no window, but there was a small air vent, and if I could just open it, I thought I might be able to crawl through and get the heck out of this disgusting, shabby place. Lucky for me, they'd given me a fork to eat with, and slowly I'd been using it to loosen the screws on the grid of the vent. Finally, on the 3rd night, I waited until everything was dead quiet, and I got into the vent. I crawled through and managed to get out. I was at the back of some old abandoned warehouse, and as I stood up to stretch my legs, someone covered my mouth from behind. Oh no! How had I got caught so quickly? But then I heard a voice. "Shh, are you okay?" I almost screamed. It was my mom. "How did you find me?" I asked. But she just grabbed my hand and said, "Let's get out of here. Then I'll explain." We climbed through a small gap in the fence, and then I saw a black car by the road. I started to panic again, but my mom told me it was for us. And then as we climbed in, she said to the driver, "I got her, James. Let's go." It was only then that I finally took a look at my mom and realized what she was wearing. She was in all black and looked like a spy or something. Mom, what's going on?" My mom bit her lip and said she couldn't hide it from me anymore. What she told me next was unbelievable. Turns out my parents weren't even my real parents. My biological mom and dad used to be members of this mob, but 12 years ago they'd been given an impossible task and they refused to do it, so their boss said he'd harm me as their punishment. My parents had no choice but to turn themselves in and ask the police for protection for me. In return, they gave the police some confidential info about the mob. Whoa, I was shocked. "So, you're not my mom? My real parents are in prison?" I felt like my head was spinning. How could my life get so crazy? Yep, they're in prison. Back then, the police stormed into the mob's headquarters, but the boss had managed to escape. That's why we put you in the protection program, because we knew he'd come search for you. This was too much. I didn't want such a dramatic life. Then I suddenly remembered there was more drama. "Mom, I found out Dad was cheating on you, so I followed him here to Boston. Did you follow him too? I mean, how did you find me? This was so weird. My mom didn't look sad at all. She said, actually, he wasn't cheating. That woman and those kids are his family. You see, at the time, he and I were the only two people qualified enough to adopt you. So he actually left his family to fake our family life to protect you. It was all part of the protection program. But he missed his family so much. That's why he went back to see them most weekends. I'm so sorry, Aaron. We didn't expect it to turn out like this. When you didn't come home on Sunday, I used the GPS we set on your phone, and that's how I found you. Okay, my head was spinning even more. Not only were they not my real parents, they weren't even a real couple. This was absolute insanity, and all to protect me? Wow. And as it turns out, it worked out pretty well, because by tracking me, they found the new boss's hideout, and now the police had arrived and he was finally being arrested. As for me and my family, we had to pretend to be a real family, for now. And actually, it wasn't that hard because I loved them so much, and they'd sacrificed the past 12 years of their life to protect me. I'd be eternally grateful to them, and my biological parents would be out of prison soon, and then I'd be reunited with them. I don't remember anything about them, but they also sacrificed their lives to protect me, so they must be pretty amazing, right?
Hey, Alex. I felt someone tap on my shoulder. I turned around to see who it was, and it was Roxy, my crush, who also happened to be the most beautiful girl in the world. I figured I must have been in her way, so I quickly mumbled out, "Sorry," and stepped aside. But out of my surprise, she smiled at me and said, "So, a little birdie told me you like me? You know, I think it's cute you haven't made a move on me yet. Not like most of the guys around here." I stared at her open-mouthed. Was I dreaming? I pinched myself to check. Nope, this was real. So I nodded my head and muttered out, yeah? My friend's having a party at their frat house on Wednesday. You want to come? Before I could reply, her friend Luke appeared, and grinning, he said, "Yeah, you just gotta come to this party." Roxy hit his arm while giving him a dirty look, then smiled at me. "So it's at number 19, starts at 9 p.m. I'll see you then?" I nodded in response, and she said, "Great, see you there." Then she winked at me before she walked off. So yeah, I'm Alex, your average second-year college student. And this is the story about how my crush tried to lure me into a seriously sinister trap. I guess I'm a normal guy. I'm not as rich and popular as the kids from the frat houses are. Instead, my room is in the regular dorms, and although I'm not ugly or unpopular or anything, I'm easily overlooked. So I kept my crush on Roxy a secret because she was way out of my league. She was so beautiful, this was crazy. How did she even find out that I liked her? I couldn't believe that she'd asked me out. This was mad. At first, I felt like the luckiest guy ever. But then as I watched Roxy walk back to her friends, I noticed them giggling, except for this one girl called Sophie. Meanwhile, Luke was making everyone high-five him. He was always a little odd, and he spoke to people in strange ways. Then I caught Sophie's eye, and she gave me a look that said, "Don't." Then she promptly looked away. Her jerky boyfriend Jack had his arm around her shoulder and was tugging on one of her trademark pigtails as he glugged back his drink. I had no idea what she saw in him. But what had her look been about? Back in my dorm, I discussed it with my roommate Ben, and he said it sounded like a setup. As much as I wanted it to be legit, my gut instinct was also saying that it was too good to be true. So the night of the party, I decided to take a look out my dorm window, as it's in the perfect location to get a clear view of the frat houses. I counted the houses down to number 19. Then I took out my binoculars, for which I used for field research studies, to take a closer look. The house had a large rainbow pride flag hanging from the two windows. This made me wonder why Roxy would want to go to a gay party. I saw a lot of feminine-dressed men, and the only two girls that I could spot were far from attractive. And it seemed like they were a couple. And then there was Luke in the front yard holding 2 drinks and looking around like he was waiting for someone. Where was Roxy? I decided to check her social media to see if she'd posted anything. And I noticed she'd left her location open. She was in a nightclub, Diego's. That was strange. So I gave the party a miss, and instead Ben and I went to a student bar. I told him about it, and he said it sounded like I dodged a bullet. The next day I was sitting with Ben and some of my other friends in the canteen when Roxy stormed over to me and yelled out, "How dare you stand me up? Who do you think you are?" Luke appeared and said, "Yeah, why not show?" I just shrugged and said, "Roxy, I know you weren't there. Your phone location's public. You were at Diego's." She hesitated, then said, Yeah, my friend borrowed my phone. But what you did was so creepy, you stalker." As if. Roxy was never without her phone, so I wasn't buying her story. This whole thing didn't make any sense, so I sort of mouthed out, "Whatever, Roxy," then carried on eating my lunch. After that, she started making my life a living hell. She told everyone that I was stalking her, so random students started coming up to me and telling me to leave her alone. Then someone covered the dorm corridors in leaflets with a picture of my face and the word stalker written across them. I knew Roxy was behind it. It was so weird. But Luke was worse. One time after class, he sneaked up on me, grabbed my arm, and said, "Hey Alex, why you bail on my party?" I told him that I saw the party from a distance and it wasn't my thing, so he replied, "Hey, you got a probs with me being gay?" I shook my head and told him I didn't, but he still wouldn't let go of my arm. I was relieved when he finally let go of me, and I hurried back to my dorm. On the way, I spotted Sophie sitting outside on the shared bathroom. Hang on, why was she in the flood of tears? I asked her if she was okay, but she told me to go away. Although I didn't want to put my nose where it shouldn't be. But I wasn't heartless, so I left her my bottle of water before I walked off. I said, "If you want to talk about it, I'm here for you." I was unlocking my dorm room when I heard someone cough behind me. I turned around to see Sophie standing there. She thanked me for the water and she said she wanted to talk. I led her into my room and she sat on my bed. And staring at her feet, she said in tears, "I caught Jack and Roxy by the locker rooms, but when I confronted them about it, they just shooed me away." I sat down next to Sophie and hugged her. This was horrible. It looks like I've been so wrong about Roxy. She wasn't my dream girl at all. Instead, she was a nightmare. Sophie continued, "It gets worse. Roxy stole my assignment and submitted it as her own. It's due tomorrow and I don't have the time to write a new one." She started crying again. I passed her a tissue and said, "We'll sort this out. There's no way she's getting away with it. That's horrible." So I told her to send an email to the college dean and to her course tutor explaining what happened. She'd attached the original assignment and all the notes she'd written about it. They both got back to us within minutes and said that they would look into this. Sophie looked so delighted, but then suddenly her smile dropped, and she fiddled with one of her pigtails as she said, "Alex, there's something I need to tell you. Please don't hate me." Then she told me how the party Roxy had invited me to had been a trap. Roxy found out I had a crush on her, and she was embarrassed that an average guy like me dared to have feelings toward her. And she was adamant she needed to teach me a lesson. So that's when Luke said he would help, as he wanted to add me to his collection, so they hatched a plan. Roxy invited me to the party, and Luke was waiting for me with a spiked drink. Apparently, this was Roxy's way of silencing me, and making sure I didn't look at her in the same way ever again. Whoa, this was so dark. I shivered at the thought of what could have been. It was terrifying. Sophie also told me that she begged Roxy not to do this, but she got her friends to hold her down. Then she told her that if she intervened, they'd make her suffer. I comforted Sophie and told her that it wasn't her fault. I knew I couldn't just stay quiet on this, as they could do this to some poor other guy who dared to have a crush on her. So with Sophie's help, we wrote a letter to the dean and to the college security about what had happened. This wasn't going to be taken lying down. Sophie was terrified that Roxy and her friends would come after her, so I invited her back to my hometown for the weekend to get away from everyone and let things cool down. When we arrived back at college, news spread that Roxy had been expelled for stealing another student's work. As for Luke, the cops raided his frat house and found loads of banned substances hidden in there. It was so serious that it went to court, and they ended up in jail. As for Jack, he tried to guilt-trip Sophie as to why she should get Roxy expelled for dumb reasons, but she stopped talking to him anyway. I often think back to the night of the party and what could have been. My life would have been ruined, and what for? All because I dared to have a crush on a beautiful girl. I say good riddance. Some good has come out of this whole mess. Sophie and I grew closer and started dating. Now we've both graduated, and that's not all. We have 2 amazing kids together. I love my beautiful family with all my heart, and I just want to protect them from all the bad in this world. So in short, I don't think that just because you're beautiful, rich, and popular, that you get away with doing whatever you please. Regardless of age, sex, looks, and so on, everyone deserves to be treated with respect and compassion.
Nina, why are you just my cousin and not my mommy? Claudia peered up at me with curious eyes. I knew where this had come from. as the topic of the week at kindergarten was family. Claudia's innocent words made me squirm with guilt. Was I a bad person? I'd been asking myself this daily for the last 4 years. Yep, the little girl next to me wasn't my daughter. I stole her from her real dad and have been raising her single-handedly ever since. It all started with my Uncle Oliver, who is a successful businessman and a super loving person. I owe a lot to him and to my grandma, as they're the ones who raised me after my parents died in a car crash when I was just a little girl. My uncle had been doing a great job filling up the missing father figure in my life. But he also wanted a biological child of his own, which was quite a tricky problem to an asexual man like him. One evening, I just got in from hanging out with my friends when I saw him sitting at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. I asked, "Uncle, what's up?" He looked at me with swollen red eyes, sighed, then said, "Nina, it's silly, really. It's just my birthday is next month, and I don't have the one thing I want the most in the world." I pulled him into a hug and comforted him. I knew he's still longing for a kid, and I wanted to help him. So, together, we looked into the surrogacy process. My uncle was so excited, and he did all the paperwork to buy a donor egg. Now, all he needed was a surrogate mother. So he went through his local surrogacy agency, and they presented him with 5 potential surrogate profiles. I swear he must have reread each of them about 100 times. But he eventually chose one, a woman called Kathy. On paper, Kathy sounded perfect. She was a 31-year-old who already had a healthy little boy called Robbie. A contract was drawn up. All Kathy's medical care would be paid for, and she'd also receive a pretty large sum of money. Then, when the baby was 1 week old, my uncle would raise them alone. This all sounds perfect, huh? Well, it soon took a turn for the worst. Once Kathy fell pregnant, Uncle Oliver wanted to be around her more so he could bond with the baby. One time I walked into the lounge to classical music playing, and my uncle pressing his head to Kathy's belly to see if the baby could hear the music. Soon coming home to find Kathy there became the norm for me. At first I didn't mind, as she was always really sweet to me, and we even had small talks from time to time. But then, one morning when I was heading downstairs to go to work, I spotted her standing in the yard helping my grandma water the flowers. I was about to walk over to greet them, then I heard her say, "Oliver is such a lovely man, but he's so busy. I worry he'll find it all a bit too much juggling a newborn and work." Then Grandma said, "Don't worry, sweetie, as he'll have Nina and me around to help." But Nina is so young, and she has her own life to lead. She's always out at a party or with some boy, and you can't be expected to take care for a baby, not at your age. I just don't want a stranger caring for my baby, not when I could help out. What? Her sweet as sugar behavior was all an act, wasn't it? How dare she try and manipulate my lovely grandma? A few days later, I went down to dinner to see Kathy sitting there. She smiled at me and asked me about my day. I wasn't buying her overly nice act, but I went along with it anyway. At one point, she suddenly took her phone out, then her smile turned into a frown. "Oh, no. Robbie has a fever. I better go to him." She immediately pulled back her chair and stood up. "You know how it is. Only a mother's love can make a little one feel better." Then she left. Kathy's poisonous words had definitely got to Grandma, as she showed concern for Robbie and let out a gentle smile as her eyes followed Kathy's steps. And that was only the beginning. Kathy's game playing continued as a few days later, she showed up on our doorstep in tears. Then she came out with some story about how the venue for Robbie's birthday party had canceled and they refused to refund her. Like clockwork, my uncle told her she could have the party at ours and that he'd cover the costs. On the day of the party, I saw Kathy pass my uncle all of the receipts for the bouncy castle, magician, catering, etc. She gently pat her tummy and grinned. "You'll be such a wonderful father. You know, we could always have another one after this. For free, of course." Then, later on, I saw her whispering something to Robbie. Then the next minute, he ran over to my uncle. He hugged his legs and said, Thank you for the party, Daddy. Then Kathy hurried over to him, ruffled his hair, and said, Oh, honey, he's not your daddy, but it'd be nice, wouldn't it, to all live here together with the baby? Enough was enough, so that night I confronted my uncle and grandma about it. I don't have a good feeling about Kathy. I think she's trying to break the contract. My uncle sighed, then said, I know. Then grandma added, Kathy's right, though. Oliver can't do this alone. You're too young and I'm too old. So it makes sense for Kathy to stick around and help. Still better than having some random stranger around, right? I can help out, I raised my voice. Rather me than her. I don't trust her. Grandma shook her head. But she's the mother. She's carrying the baby. Their bond is undeniable. I know what it's like to lose people I love. Kathy will break this baby's heart. I'm sure of it. She's only out for herself. My face turned red as I raised my voice. My uncle remained silent. Then he just sighed and walked out of the room. I ran after him and pulled him back. Uncle, you made your choice right from the beginning. Why change it now? He replied with his eyes glued to the ground. Your grandma has a point. What? My voice was up to high pitch. Stop letting that witch Kathy manipulate you. He shook his head, then walked away. Oh my God. They were being controlled like puppets. This needed to stop. So I decided to confront Kathy about it. My chance arrived the next day. She was helping to cook dinner, so I said to her, I know what you're up to. You just want an easy life without any money worries. That's why you're manipulating them. But you can't fool me. She stopped chopping the carrots, then looked at me. Is that so? The thing is, Nina, I always get what I want. She gave me an evil smirk. Then she slammed the knife into the carrot with such ferocity that I flinched. It was official. Kathy was crazy, but I didn't have any proof. So basically, there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. As expected, the craziness continued into the next day. I went to Grandma's room and saw her looking flustered as she searched through her bedside drawer. I, again, couldn't find my pills, and that they kept on showing up in strange places. She seemed really worried that she was losing her mind. Later on, when we were all eating dinner, Kathy went to the fridge, and surprise, surprise, guess what she found there? Yep, Grandma's pills. Obviously, Kathy had put them there. Then she walked over to Grandma, rubbed her shoulder, concernedly said, I should have taken care of you more. We should have you checked by the doctor as soon as possible. Age can be so cruel on the mind, and you don't want to be forgettable around the baby. After that, Grandma seemed totally convinced that she was too old to take care for a baby, even after the doctor told her she was fine. Furthermore, she was adamant that Kathy should move in to help out. Ugh! What a snake Kathy was! A month later, the baby was born. A girl. My uncle named her Claudia, after my mom. We all cried happy tears and welcomed her into our family. Kathy got her wish, and both her and Robbie moved into our house. One morning I came downstairs to see Kathy holding the baby. In front of her was the ripped-up contract. I told her to leave, and she smirked and said, You're a smart girl, Nina, but you're no match for me. I'm not going anywhere. This is my home now, so get used to it. I knew there was no point telling my uncle and grandma about this. I couldn't let this woman destroy my family. She was dangerous. She could end up hurting everyone. She'd never stop until she got what she wanted, and there's no way I could let that happen. So, when Kathy was in the bathroom, I picked Claudia up, and before I could stop myself, I was fleeing from the house and out of their lives. I moved to a new town and got a new job. It was only meant to be temporary, but I guess I was too selfish and afraid to go back. I'd always been truthful with Claudia about one thing, that I was her cousin, not her mom. So, when Claudia said the words, Nina, why are you just my cousin and not my mommy? I felt so guilty. She was missing out on a relationship with her father because of me. Yes, I'd wanted my family to get out of Kathy's trap, but what I did wasn't fair to my uncle. I knew that now. I had no right taking his daughter away from him for 4 years. I felt so awful. Thinking about the distress I must have caused him and Grandma, the guilt was eating me up, and I knew I couldn't carry on like this anymore. So I called up an old family friend and asked him to approach my uncle. Later that day, my friend got back to me with a message from him. Kathy's gone, and she won't be coming back. You were right about her. Of course. She was only after my money. After you left, she didn't seem to care about Claudia at all, and she threatened to go to the cops and report you unless I paid her off. Please, just come back to me and Grandma. We sure aren't happy with what you did, but we know you had good intentions. We love you, and we just want our girls back home. Tears streamed down my face. They'd found it in their hearts to forgive me. Running away had never been the answer, even if I'd done it with good intentions. It was time to stop running. It was time to go home. So I peered down at the little girl who reminded me so much of my uncle. Claudia? I took her hand. Are you ready to go home to Daddy?
Yes! Headshot! Go cry to your mama! You're probably wondering who this gaming pro is. Well, that's me. Yes, it's 3 a.m., and I've been playing for 9 hours straight, but time sure does fly when I'm gaming. I'm Cooper, by the way, and I live with my wife Amelia and our baby girl Aura. I wanted to call her Zelda, but my wife said no way. I love gaming, and always thought it would be there to save me, but instead, it almost cost me everything I love. It started back when I was a little kid. My parents argued a lot, so I used to make a fort in my room, switch on my Nintendo DS, and escape into a virtual world. This love of games continued as I grew up. I didn't socialize or anything. Instead, I rushed home from school and went straight on my Xbox, PlayStation, or PC. I didn't have any real friends. Nope. The only kids I spoke to were ones I gamed with. Then I graduated from college and ended up with a job as a system engineer for a big tech company. Geez, it was exhausting. By the time I got home, I was so tired I could barely keep my eyes open, let alone game. So I put my gaming equipment in the basement. But then everything changed when I bumped into Amelia in a local coffee house. Whoa. She was the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. I guess she must have seen something she liked in this goofball, as after dating 6 months, we got married. I know. Crazy, huh? Soon after, she fell pregnant. I was excited but also terrified. How did that happen? I mean, I know how it actually happened, but whoa. Me? A dad? Then, when Aura was born, my life turned completely upside down. You see, babies cause a lot of stress. Did you know that the quickest way to get a child's attention is to sit down and look comfortable? 'Cause every time I did that, she started to cry. Work sucked, and then my home life sucked too. There was no escape. I felt like I was going to explode. So I went down to the basement and set my PC up. I started playing World of Warcraft. It felt incredible to be a druid again. The thought of gaming kept me going at work. Then when I got home, I barely acknowledged my wife and daughter and rushed down to the basement to play games. Amelia wasn't happy about it. She often appeared with a crying Aura and told me to take her. But I just grunted out "I'm busy," then carried on with my game. Hey, she was the one at home all day while I worked my butt off. All she needed to do was take care of the baby and keep the house clean. Easy. I told her this, and she got mad and made me sleep on the couch. Great. No, I mean really great. I could play video games all night long. Awesome. But it turns out it's much easier to game all night when you're in high school and can catch some Z's at the back of the class. But not so easy when you have a taxing job. I was on level 100 of exhaustion, so it wasn't surprising that I ended up messing up at work and got fired. Amelia was furious and demanded I apply for other jobs. Nah, I didn't want to. I mean, hello? No more early mornings, no more deadlines, no more cranky boss. It was just me and my beloved games. On one occasion, I was heading toward a record high score when suddenly Amelia appeared and blocked the screen. Babe, you need to move. I jabbed at the game console as I desperately tried to peer around her. No, she shouted at me. What's happened to you, Cooper? You look like Gandalf, only the homeless version. You hadn't taken a bath and shaved for weeks. You're killing me here. Now I'm dead. Thanks a lot. I slammed my fist onto the table. That's it. Get out. She yanked on my arm. I can't take this anymore. Get out. She actually kicked me out of my own home. That crazy woman. I didn't have any friends, so I ended up at my parents' house. This was so humiliating. I told them that it was just Amelia being hormonal, but they said she told them all about my gaming obsession, and it had to stop. They'd signed me up to be some guinea pig for an experimental treatment program in Hawaii. Hey, maybe a beach vacation didn't sound so bad, right? But nope. The island was literally in the middle of nowhere. Where was the hotel? All I saw were tiny huts with grass roofs. What? They couldn't expect me to stay here. This instructor guy called Cole gathered the group on the beach and gave us a rundown of the rules. We'd be camping here for the whole month, without any digital devices. We also had to follow a strict diet and exercise plan. Are you kidding me? I felt like I'd been sucked into a survival game and the escape button was busted. Everybody else started building their tents side by side. Socializing wasn't really my thing, so I built my tent away from them by the sea. It was hungry work, and my stomach was rumbling. So I asked Cole when dinner was ready. He told me it was my job to make a fire. Then he passed me a note with instructions. 1. Gather dry wood. 2. Create a fire structure. 3. Light the fire by using the hand drill method. Okay, sounded easy. Dang it! I've been spinning this for about 20 minutes now. Where's the damn fire? I was about to give up when I suddenly saw something glowing. Oh my god, it worked! But then I felt a sneeze and couldn't hold it. Oh no, there goes the ember. In the end, this one guy pushed me out of the way and lit the fire in a few minutes. What a show-off. I was licking my lips in excitement when I saw Cole bringing out some food, but disappointedly, he passed me a plate of veg. What? I shouted out, "Where's the freaking chicken?" Cole pointed at the white thing on my plate. It's chicken breast. No, that's not chicken. Where are the wings and the breadcrumbs? He rolled his eyes. It's called clean eating. Get used to it. This place was a nightmare, but a good night's sleep would make me feel better, right? Wrong, as the ground was as hard as rocks. Finally, I fell asleep, only to wake up with soggy feet. Oh no, my tent was flooded. No wonder nobody else chose to camp next to the ocean. Island routine was awful. It was full of dumb group activities such as meditation, beach soccer, and hiking. One day we even had to build a raft. As usual, I tried my best to avoid working and socializing, but there's no way they'd leave me alone, so I reluctantly participated. After it was done, we tried it out, but it soon capsized, and I was the only one that couldn't swim. Everyone immediately rushed over and saved me. I was so touched and felt ashamed that I've been so self-centered. So after that, I actually tried to put myself out there and be more sociable. And not gonna lie, it was not too bad. Then our evenings were spent sitting around the campfire and listening to everyone drone on about their problems. My turn was easy for me because I had no problems. The problem was my wife, not me. She didn't understand that I had a lot of pressure at work and home. So playing video games was my only escape. Everyone tutted and glared at me. Then a guy named Brad said, "That's not cool, bro. To be honest, I was the same way. I was addicted to watching sports and refused to help my wife out. So we switched places, and I learned how hard caring for the kids and looking after the house is. I knew I needed to change before I lost my family forever, so that's why I joined the program." Poor guy, but this wasn't the same for me, was it? I don't know, maybe I had been a little unfair on Amelia. I was thinking about this as I walked back to my tent when this girl named Brittany caught up with me. She put her hand on my shoulder and flicked out her hair. Was she, flirting? I waved my wedding ring finger in front of her, but she just shrugged and said, "I don't see your wife here. Come to me when you change your mind." Then she walked away. Geez, this girl was crazy. Kinda hot, but still crazy. The next day, I unzipped my tent, ready for another day in this nightmare. But what was this? Huh? It was kinda beautiful here. It was like I was seeing it for the first time. The sparkling sand, swaying palm trees, lush tropical plants, and endless sunshine. Amelia and Aura would love it here too. I hoped they'd both forgive me. I really did miss them. By the end of the month, I didn't want to go home and play games anymore. Instead, I wanted to hug my family and never let them go. The day before we left, Cole rewarded us all with a 1-minute phone call. As much as I wanted to hear Amelia's voice, I was kinda nervous. I hoped she wasn't mad at me anymore. The phone started to ring, but some guy picked up. I asked where Amelia was, but he said she was in the shower. Then the line went dead. My 1 minute was up. Who was that dude? Was she having an affair? We were still married. And we have a child together. Furious, I ran into Brittany's tent, wanting to get back at my cheating wife. Brittany came toward me and was about to kiss me, but I couldn't go through with it. So I dodged out of the way, mumbled out sorry, then hurried out of there. The next day, I finally got off the island, and I went straight home to confront Amelia. I opened the door to see a man standing there holding my little Ara. How dare he? I yelled out, "Get away from my daughter!" Suddenly, Amelia appeared. "Cooper, stop! It's Rob!" I processed this information. Oh wait, he was Rob, her half-brother. Oops. I'd never met him before as he'd been living abroad. I quickly muttered out an apology to him. How embarrassing. I noticed Amelia was giving me this weird look. Then she said, "Wow, Cooper, you look so different." Oh yeah, before we were sent home, each of us were treated to a little makeover. A new haircut, new clothes, and a shave. And the clean eating and exercise meant I'd lost 20 pounds. Guess Amelia just couldn't resist this new hottie in town. She went straight for one big hug. So, in the end, Amelia forgave me for being a massive jerk. Now I have a new job. It's pretty boring, but I enjoy coming home and spending time with my family. As for gaming, I still do it, but in moderation. Only Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I make sure I switch it off by 10 p.m. Then I go and cuddle my wife. The gaming world is great and all, but I've come to learn that there's something even better in life, and that's making memories in the real world with my girls.
The buzzing of my phone woke me up. Ugh, what was this? It's 6 a.m. for Christ's sakes. Go away, I slurred at my phone, trying to reach my arm over to shut it up. The buzzing stopped briefly, but then started up again, so I answered it with a frustrated, "Yeah." My girlfriend Nayla replied, "Samuel, my roomies are going away for the night, so hurry over and bring me a big kiss." Well, that sure got my attention. I sat upright and replied, "Sure, babe, I'll shower then come right over." "Ooh, I love it when you freshen up for me," she giggled. Anything for my girl. I was so excited that I whooped and fist-punched the air, then rushed out of bed to go get ready. Oh, how naive and unsuspecting I was. Guys, never in a million years could I have imagined the humiliating situation I was about to step into. Ah, my sweet Nayla, my high school sweetheart and the love of my life. The problem was that we now went to different colleges, but it wasn't just 3 cities separating us, you see. She lives in a female-only hostel. Yeah, you heard me right. It's female-only, and there are some pretty strict rules in place. The main one being, guys are only allowed to visit on weekdays between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. What a bummer. If this wasn't bad enough, Nayla's 2 roommates, Phoebe and Luna, were man-hating vultures. Shudder. Phoebe hated men because they'd cheated her out of money not once, but twice. As for Luna, well, I don't really know what her problem with guys was. I think she just likes copying Phoebe. So you see, that's the reason why I never stepped foot in there, not even during visiting hours. But now they were away. I was free to visit my girl without fear of them circling me with their death stares. I showed up smelling of my fave aftershave, and with a box of candy. It was so good to spend some time with Nayla, but geez, these visiting hours passed by quickly. Soon 5 p.m. arrived and I had to leave. It was even stormy out and I wasn't looking forward to the trip back. "Don't go," Nayla pulled on my arm. "I have an idea. Seeing as how my roomies are away, you should stay the night until the next day's curfew." She chewed on her lip. Wow, she was so sexy. She knew I couldn't resist it when she did that lip thing. I hugged her and said, "Now you're talking." That night we cuddled up on her bed and watched a romantic movie, had some chicken sandwiches and waffle fries. And with the sound of the storm outside as our setting, we French kissed. A lot. Talk about paradise. But then her phone buzzed. She checked the message. Her eyes full of panic, then she said, "Samuel, this is bad. The storm means that Phoebe and Luna are ending their trip early. They're on their way back." I knew that if anyone caught me here, they'd probably throw Nayla out. I couldn't let that happen to my girl. But escaping the hostel wouldn't be easy. She opened the door to check. The problem was her door opened up into the shared living room, and there were some girls hanging out in there. Ugh, what was I meant to do now? We were 4 stories up, so I couldn't exactly climb out of the window. And it's not like I could dig my way out. Nayla started pacing the room. Then she opened her wardrobe up and tried making space for me in there. Heck no, confined spaces weren't my thing. But thankfully, just then, she shook her head and muttered to herself, "That's no good, the others use it too." She quickly changed her mind. Then grinning at me, she said, "I know, let's turn you into a girl." Immediately, she pulled out from the wardrobe this long wig we used last Halloween. Putting the thing on my head, she continued, "Almost. I know, you need makeup. Then she started slathering this powdery stuff on my face. Oh dear, the madness has begun. I was so stunned I just sat there and let her make me up like I was a doll. The wig was so itchy and it kept on sticking to my lip gloss and stuff, and I couldn't even see properly through the fake eyelashes she stuck on. After finishing, she stepped back to look at her finished masterpiece. Then she burst out laughing. I looked in the mirror. Even through my sticky eyelash vision, I could tell that I looked ridiculous. Seriously, I was more a clown than a girl. She threw an oversized dress at me and said, I don't have anything else that'll fit you. I reluctantly got changed, and then I noticed that she was staring at my legs. I looked at them too. Geez, they were gorilla-level hairy. Don't worry, I'll sort those out for you. The next thing I knew, she was positioning me down on her desk chair and then passed me a towel, in case of emergency. Then she started preparing the wax strips. What could be so bad about a little bit of wax, huh? Then she ripped it off. Oh, good God, the pain. I began to perspire and bit down on the towel to block out my screams. Why did girls put themselves through this torturous activity? No thanks, I'd rather be hairy. The last wax strip was the worst, and my screams escaped out of the towel. Oops! I immediately jumped on the bed, facing the wall, and pulled a blanket over my head, while Nayla tried to put away all the makeup and stuff as fast as possible. The girls in the living room for sure had heard me and rushed inside. Behind them were Phoebe and Luna, who just got home. What's with the screaming, and who is she? Phoebe pointed at me. I thought I saw a spider, but it was just a clump of hair. And this is Samantha. She's my friend, but she's come down with a fever and she's gonna have to stay over. Suddenly, the blanket was pulled out and a hand came towards my forehead. My heart stopped beating for a second. Then Luna said, Yup, she's on fire. Let's leave her to rest. Whew, that was a close one. Turns out the waxing session had heated me up so badly that I ended up drenched in sweat. So I could totally pass for being ill. Luckily, after that, the other girls left the room to give me some space. Nayla cuddled up to me and whispered, You're doing great. We need to keep this up till morning. Then you can leave when the boys are allowed here. I gave a meek nod. I was too afraid to talk in case someone heard me. This was bad. But I guess all this drama wiped me out as I managed to fall asleep. I awoke to someone pounding my shoulder. Hey, you're snoring like a grunting pig, Nayla hissed at me. After that, I lay there wide-eyed and terrified. I didn't dare fall back to sleep. It was going to be a long night. The minutes went by so slowly, but then, oh no, Mother Nature called. I tried crossing my legs, but it didn't help. All I could think about was the beach and a waterfall and, I had to go to the bathroom right now. The room was dead quiet, so the other girls must be sleeping, right? I tiptoed through the room, then to the living room. Not familiar with the house, I had to use my hands to guide myself. Then suddenly, I accidentally touched something soft. While my brain was trying to work out what it was, I felt a slap across my face. Then a girl said, Hey, what are you doing? Horrified, I tried to squeak out a sorry with the girliest voice I could, then hurried off to find the bathroom. But that was not all. While I was in there, the door suddenly opened, and a girl saw me peeing while standing up. Damn it, I should have locked the door. Then she yelled out, What on earth is this? I finished what I was doing, then turned around to try to explain, but the girl looked so terrified as she pointed at me and stuttered, Ghost! Ghost! Oh, right. My wig was hanging down over my face, so I probably looked like that spooky girl from The Ring. I froze there, not sure what I should do next, when the other girls gathered around me. Luckily, my babe ran over and put her arm around my waist and said, Sorry, girls, my friend often sleepwalks, and combined with the fever, it's made her delirious. Then she quickly pulled me back to her room and everyone dispersed. Phew, that was a close call. After that, I lay in bed too afraid to cough, flinch, and basically breathe. It was the longest and most tiring night of my life. Finally, morning arrived. This ordeal would end soon, right? Wrong! Phoebe and Luna wouldn't leave the room at all. What was going on? Didn't they have lives to lead? In the end, Nayla asked them, You two don't have classes today, huh? They must have shaken their heads or something, and then she said, Oh, okay. There's a new clothes shop open in the mall. Want to check it out? Without responding, Phoebe sprang to her feet, walked over to me, pulled back the blanket, and tugged at my wig. Then, with a massive smirk on her face, said, Game over, Samantha! Shocked, me and Nayla tried muttering out explanations, but Phoebe rolled her eyes. Quit it. I can recognize a man from a mile away. Besides, his boots are under your bed. Then there's his aftershave. It stinks. She waved her hand in front of her face. Well, you fooled me. Luna stared at me. Actually, your makeup's pretty good. Huh, but not me, Phoebe sneered. I only kept quiet because I don't want to get Nayla kicked out. That, and it was kind of funny watching you both try to keep up the pretense. She glared at me. But I suggest you leave before I change my mind. I headed toward the door, but then Nayla said, babe, you may want to change first. Oops. In all the drama, I'd forgotten I was still dressed up as a girl. She handed me some face wipes so I could remove the makeup. Then I changed back into my clothes, muttered out an apology to her roomies, then hurried out of there. So this happened a while ago, but just thinking about it still makes me cringe. Oh, the shame. I haven't seen Luna and Phoebe since, and I don't think I'll ever be able to look them in the eye again. One good thing to come out of it, that Nayla and me are now stronger than ever. The things we do for love, huh? So that's it, the most cringeworthy episode of my life. Yep, I know, it's so humiliating. So what about you? How bad is yours?